Assalamu alaikum. It's always a pleasure and an honor to be back in my hometown of Houston. And I want to give a special appreciation to all the hardworking volunteers, all the organizers, because you guys are really the stars. We come for 30 minutes, we give a small talk, but you guys have been working for a very long time to put this together. So let's give them a round of applause. Bismillah. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Confused, frustrated, hopeless. So many of my clients come to me with these raw emotions, and they all ask me the same thing time and time again. They ask me, should I stay and remain patient in my marriage, or should I escape and be free? Should I give up my happiness and sacrifice for my children, or will my children be better off, and will it be healthier for them if I leave? Should I stay married or should I get a divorce? Now, this is one of the toughest questions anyone has to battle. And it is a decision that if you make it, it will affect every aspect of your life. Now, whether you're struggling with this question or not, or you know someone who's struggling, inshallah, this lecture will benefit you. You know, it is very natural to have certain fears when you're thinking about this question. You'll have fear of, will I ever get married again? Will the person that I marry be worse than the one that I already have? And will my children suffer? And what will the people think about me? So these fears are very, very natural, and they develop over years and years of difficulty. But you know what the problem is? The problem is that people don't get help early. They wait until it's too late. They do not resolve the problems. What they do is that they just wish that the problems would magically go away. They don't get professional advice. What they do is they seek help from friends and family. Now, what does Allah say? فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. That ask the people of knowledge if you do not know. If we have a heart problem, we will go to a heart surgeon. If we have any kind of issues, medical problem, we will go to the professionals. So when we are having issues in our marriage, in our relationship, in our mental health, we really need to make an effort to go to the professionals to get that help. It's so crucial because you get unbiased advice. How many times have people gone and gotten advice from their family members and they're completely biased and they may not see the full picture? Now, I want you to reflect on something for a minute, that every 13 seconds, someone gets a divorce. Every 13 seconds. That's 46,000 divorces a week. Now, why are so many people getting a divorce? There are 5 points, 5 reasons that I have reflected over the 20 years of doing the counseling that I see that these are the reasons people are getting a divorce. Can you guess them? Can you think what are the main reasons people are getting a divorce? Number 1 is abuse, some kind of abuse. It could be physical, emotional, verbal, psychological. It could be infidelity, whether that's emotional infidelity or physical infidelity. Could be neglect, where you feel that your needs are not being fulfilled. It could be the constant fighting, or it could be living as roommates. Now, if there is abuse, do you think someone should stay in a marriage if there is abuse? If there is perpetual and physical abuse in the relationship, you really need to reconsider and you need to get out. If you fear for your safety, if you fear for the safety of your children, this is not something to contemplate. Now, there are perpetual kinds of abuse, and then there's a one-time occurrence. And you really have to see, where is your red line? For some people, if there is any physical abuse, that's it. They will not take it. But for others, they will find that it was this one incident. I had one couple who came to me, and they were very much in love. They were recently married, and they got into a fight. They were in the car, and the wife started arguing about the mother-in-law, right? And so she got really heated and started saying a lot of inappropriate things. The husband kept telling, stop, don't say that about my mother. You need to stop right now. And she kept going and going and going, and he got physical, and he was so shocked with himself. He's like, I never thought that I would be a person who would raise my hand to my wife. So he was extremely remorseful, and he was ready to make that change, and she decided to forgive him, and they were able to resolve their marriage. So you need to see if it's perpetual, if it's ongoing, if you feel that you're in danger, you're not safe, your children are not safe, then you definitely need to get out of that situation. But if you feel that it's something that he can change and he's remorseful, you can give it a second chance. Then there is emotional or verbal abuse, which is just as painful. I had a client in Kenya who told me, I wish that he would beat me. I wish that I had bruises to show the people what he has done to me, because no one believes me. He had this impeccable image at the masjid, at work. He smiled, he was generous, he was kind, and yet when he came home, he verbally abused her. He emotionally took advantage of her. And so when there is that kind of ongoing abuse, this will have a very long-lasting effect on a person. So if you feel that this is constantly belittling you, if this is crushing your self-esteem and you feel worthless, you really need to reconsider this marriage. I had one client who had been subjected to 7 years of abuse, both physical, verbal, emotional. And one of the things she told me, she said, I feel completely worthless. He has made me feel ugly, fat, stupid, and that, making a person feel that way, this is unjust. And if you feel that you are in this situation, you definitely need to get yourself out of it. Allah says, فَقُولَا لَهُ قَوْلًا لَيِّنًا لَعَلَّهُ يَتَذَكَّرُ أَوْ يَخْشَىٰ. And speak to him with gentle speech, that perhaps he may be reminded or fear. Now, Allah is saying this to the Prophet who is going to approach the most oppressive person. If Allah is advising the Prophet to address with kindness and gentleness, this was having that gentleness with Pharaoh, then what about us? How should we be treating our spouse? How should we be treating our children? We need to have that gentleness. And you find that many people are consumed with good deeds. They are obsessive about their dhikr, they are reading their adhkar, they are praying, they're doing the sunnah, they are fasting on Mondays and Thursdays, but then when it comes to dealing with their spouse, they become a monster. And I have seen this before my eyes in the session where the wife would be very self-righteous, talking about how she never skips a sunnah prayer. I'm constantly in dhikr. My husband doesn't do any of this stuff. He is not religious enough. And she's looking down at him. And at the same time, in the same session, what does she do? She is cursing her husband out in front of me. And I look at her and I'm baffled. I say, where is the religiosity? You put what he is not doing, as far as not doing the adhkar or not doing the sunnah prayers, put that on one scale and put you cursing out your husband on another scale. Which one is going to be more punishable? It is the way you treat your spouse. The ibadah that you do, every act that you do should be building you and building your akhlaq. If you are doing these rituals, If you're doing the rituals and it does not translate in the way you treat your spouse and your children, there is something wrong. You really need to reevaluate, and you really need to work on yourself, because your ibadah needs to translate into your character. So another case, so we talked about the emotional abuse, we talked about the physical abuse, then there can also be infidelity. And you would be surprised how common infidelity is in the Muslim community. Sometimes I will have up to five clients that are all they have been cheated on. Now, this is sometimes the man and sometimes it's the woman, unfortunately. So when it's infidelity, you can either have emotional infidelity. Emotional infidelity is if you contact someone, if you're chatting online, if you're having some kind of just a relationship, a friendship, and then there's the physical relationship. Now, many people ask this over and over again: can a marriage survive after infidelity? I have seen the most atrocious cases. I have seen people who have broken the trust over and over again. I have seen people that have done the most unspeakable things, but then they were able to restore their marriage. Now, there are some key ingredients. This cannot happen with every marriage, and some marriages, the smallest act of infidelity destroys it for good. But there are some key ingredients I'm going to mention to you that if you have this in your marriage, it might be salvageable, inshallah. One, there has to be remorse. A person needs to recognize that what they did was wrong. It was unacceptable to break the trust, the covenant between you and Allah, and the covenant between you and your spouse. You have to feel the gravity of this act. And if you don't, if the person does not feel the gravity, if they don't feel remorseful, then this is going to happen again. So I had one client that he had cheated on his wife, and he felt horrible about it. He did everything in his power to change the act. He cut that relationship off. He became religious. He became a better spouse. He did everything, and that marriage survived. There also needs to be the end of the affair. So you cannot have a side relationship in your marriage. And I remember a couple that came to me, and actually in this situation, the wife was the one who was cheating. And I told her that you need to end this relationship. You've got to end this. And she told me that he is the air that I breathe. I cannot live without him. And I told him, well, I'm sorry, but I will not be able to do marriage counseling with you. If you don't end this, it is like a cancer in your marriage. Can you just let cancer thrive in your body and say, you know what, we're just going to ignore the cancer? No way. And subhanAllah, she said that was one of the lowest points. When you refused to do the session with me, it made me reconsider everything. And I decided, and mashallah, that was a catalyst to get her to change her life, to become religious, to end the relationship, and they were able, alhamdulillah, with the mercy of Allah, restore that relationship. So there has to be one, we said, what was it? Number one? Remorse, very good. Remorse. Second is that you need to end the affair. And then third, there has to be a willingness to change. There has to be, you have to recognize how bad this act was, and that you have to save this marriage, and you want to work on yourself. And the fourth final ingredient to save a marriage after infidelity is to be a better spouse. Now, I had a couple that they went through this, they went through infidelity, and he had the remorse, he ended the relationships, he worked on himself, and he became one of the most ideal spouses because he felt like he wanted to really save the marriage. And I've seen people, not only in professional life, but also amongst my friends who have gone through this, such a difficult test to go through, and they were able to even get closer than before, because it is somewhat of a wake-up call. People recognize that, my God, things were falling apart and I didn't even know it. Sometimes you take your spouse for granted and you don't realize how badly your relationship has been damaged. Now, the next thing is neglect. Another reason why people get divorced is that they feel neglected. They feel that there's maybe no financial support. I know many women that they may be in a situation where they're not financially supported. There could be no emotional support, where you feel disconnected. There is no sense of comfort, no sense of friendship, or no sense of connection. And you have to ask yourself two questions. One is, can you manage? Because there are individuals who say that, you know what, even though I don't get this fulfillment, even though I feel neglected, I can manage this. And we had a family member that actually was in this situation. She had a husband, and she was like, you know, he's not a bad man. He doesn't do anything bad, but he doesn't do anything good either, okay? So there was no real emotional connection. There was no sense of interest, personal interest, but she decided to stay and keep the family together. She decided to fill the void, because we have a void, and this void, you know, there's a part of it that is only your spouse can fill, right? And the problem with a lot of people is that they expect their spouse to fill this big void, right? And they want everything from this one person. And some people are able to do that, but for the majority of the people, they won't be able to fulfill all those things. So this woman, what she did is that she had this part empty, but she filled that void. She worked, she volunteered, she gave in charity, she did so many things, friends and family and relatives, and she felt fulfilled. So she stayed in the marriage, which is very honorable. If someone is able to do that and they don't feel like there's any form of abuse, there's nothing bad going on in the marriage, and they can maintain the family, then that is honorable. And the Prophet ﷺ said, you must be gentle. Verily, gentleness is not in anything except that it beautifies it, and it is not removed from anything except that it disgraces it. So this gentleness, this beauty, how can you neglect your spouse when you are being so, you know, congenial at the masjid, when you're being so nice and friendly to others, and yet you turn your back on your own spouse? We really need to make sure that we have this gentleness that the Prophet ﷺ is talking about. I remember one client told me, it's like, all I want is to come home and for my wife to smile at me. All I want is a smile. Another one said, all I want is that my spouse just simply asks me, how was your day? What did you do? And another guy just said, he goes, all I want is a hug. It's like, I just want a hug. And imagine, these are just such simple, basic needs. And how can we withhold that? I just told a client, I said, you know, she really loves the Arab generosity. And actually, one of the things she dislikes in her husband is saying, well, he's just not generous. He's not generous enough. And I said, you know that generosity you're talking about? There's a generosity in giving emotions. And right now, you're being extremely stingy. You are being stingy in your affection to your spouse. How can we hold that back? Just like it's very ugly to see a person being stingy with their hospitality, it's just as ugly to be stingy with your affection, with your kind words, with your kindness. The next reason for divorce is constant fighting. What do you think happens when you're constantly fighting? You wake up, you're in a bad mood, every interaction is, hostile, and everything that you want to discuss turns into a fight. What do you think that happens to your body? What do you think that does to the environment of the house? What do you think that does to your kids? What do you think that does to your iman? It will erode all of those things. Let's start with the body. When you are fighting, your body releases cortisol, which is the stress hormone. And you know what this does? This actually, it affects the functioning of the brain. It affects the functioning of the brain, and that is why many people, when they are angry, they do a lot of stupid things. They say a lot of stupid things because they're not even functioning properly. And what it does also is that it shrinks the hippocampus. The hippocampus, the part of your brain that is responsible for learning and memory. How many of you are suffering from forgetting where everything is? It might be from all this excess cortisol in your blood. And your brain literally shrinks by having cortisol in your blood. Can you imagine? Our brains are shrinking. So you could be eating organic, you could be exercising, you could be doing all of these wonderful things to stay healthy, but that cortisol from fighting with your spouse is releasing a poison, and it's killing you slowly. Okay? So that's what it does to your body. As far as what does it do to your iman? If you just had a fight with your spouse and you're ready to pray, what are you thinking about? Are you having the khushu? Are you connecting with Allah? Are you softening your heart? Or are you just bitter and angry and frustrated? So it's definitely going to affect your iman. What about the tension at home? You know, I have so many young adults who come to me and they tell me, you know, the house, the environment is it is just so destructive. I have one family that I'm seeing, and they, because of the hostile environment in the home, the kids have turned to alcohol and drugs, and they have left Islam because they just can't take it. They feel that there's so much anger and frustration, and they have so much pain. The pain is so much that they have to numb it. They have to numb the pain with alcohol and drugs. So isn't that sad that we are creating an environment that our kids, that this is what they have to resort to? So what happens is that we also, this negative effect on the kids, they look at mom and dad and they're constantly fighting. And what is their view of marriage? Oh my God, I don't ever want to get married. You know how many youth groups I've talked to? And one of the things is that I fear getting married. I don't want to be abused. I don't want someone to be yelling at me. And that is so destructive, because if marriage is not an option, if your kids are not excited and looking forward to getting married, what's the alternative, right? So we're creating this environment where it's tense, and you're tense, your body is tense, the kids are hating marriage, and this will affect not only your dunya, you're miserable in the dunya, it's going to affect your akhirah. You're going to be miserable in the akhirah, because what happens when you're really upset from your spouse? Are you going to do your obligations? Are you going to do those loving acts? You're going to fall short. And so a lot of times I tell my clients, if you need to make a decision whether to stay or leave, you need to ask yourself, how is this not just going to affect my dunya? How is this going to affect my akhirah? How am I going to face my creator? How am I going to explain all the things, all the obligations that I'm not doing? Because you will be asked for them. And you can't use it as an excuse that, well, he didn't give salams to me first. He didn't give me the affection. So you really need to consider all of this. And then the last reason is that sometimes people live as roommates. What does it mean to live as roommates? Well, it's basically people living in the same household. They sleep at different times. They eat at different times. They don't connect. They don't have any shared interests. And this loneliness can lead, unfortunately, to bitterness. It can lead to being very low in iman, and it can also lead to infidelity. I had one couple, both were doctors, both were practicing Muslims, and they lived like this for over 20 years. The husband lived upstairs, the wife lived downstairs. They did not have any connection. He did his thing, she did her thing, never connecting. And she ended up actually falling into infidelity. And she felt justified. She's like, he doesn't give me any time. He doesn't give me any affection. And these, mind you, I'm not talking about the non-Muslims. I'm talking about practicing Muslim families. So if you don't guard your relationship. Sometimes the focus is just about getting your man or getting your woman. It's about keeping your man, keeping your woman, and keeping them happy. That is the key. We need to focus on keeping our spouse happy, because if we don't, we will fall into all of these issues. Now, the nature of people is that they're either fear-based meaning that everything is motivated out of fear. They come from a place of, oh my God, what if this happens? Whether that's in your career, whether that's in a business venture, whether it's an investment, you come from a place of fear, a fear of failure, fear of what if. And then there's action-based people. And these individuals, they are more ambitious, they're risk takers, and they don't want to settle. They want the best. So depending on what kind of person you are, it's going to determine the decision that you make. And it's very much a balancing act, okay? It's a balance between your needs and the needs of the people around you. And I usually see two extremes. So there's those who are martyrs, right? They are martyrs. I give up my life, I give up my education, I give up my work, and they never let anyone forget it, right? You know those martyrs? And they don't let you forget it. They don't let you live it down. So if you're a martyr, do it for the sake of Allah, okay? Don't put minna on the people around you because you're choosing to do this. Then there's the other extreme, right? There's that complete selfishness. A person could be like, well, you know what? I'm not getting my needs met. I don't care about my kids. I don't care about my husband or the family or anything else. I need to be happy. So we need to create a balance between our needs and the needs of our family and just create that balance, which is not easy. And what I've noticed is that there's some people who stay too long in an abusive marriage. They take too much. There's perpetual abuse. There is constant infidelity, and they stay, and they don't think about leaving. I had one client that she was married for 40 years to a man who cheated on her, who abused her, who belittled her, and he drank, and he didn't pray. And when I asked her, I said, why, sister? Why are you in this circumstance? And she would say, well, I always thought that he would change. My hope was one day he's going to wake up and he's going to change. Well, let me tell you that no one is going to miraculously change unless they recognize that they have a problem. They're not going to change unless they recognize that they're remorseful for their action, and they're not going to change unless they seek help. So don't fool yourself to think that the person who has been abusing you is going to magically stop abusing you if they don't wake up, if they don't get the help that they need. So be aware of that, because a cheater will remain a cheater unless he's remorseful and he gets the help he needs. The abuser will remain an abuser unless he recognizes his mistake and gets the help that he needs. And the neglectful person will remain neglectful unless he recognizes and he gets the help that he needs. So don't get stuck in that situation. And then there are those individuals that they frivolously end the marriage. It's only been 6 months of marriage, and they tell me that they're going to get a divorce. Over what? I'll give you some scenarios. I had one sister that came, and she was crying, and she said, it's over, it's over. I said, how long have you been married? And she said, it's been, 6 months. I said, what is the problem? So I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, maybe he cheated, maybe there's abuse, what happened? I'm thinking about all these different scenarios, I go, what happened? And she goes, he snores. And I'm like, and? Now imagine every person who snores goes and gets a divorce, like their spouse snores, no one will stay married, right? So there are many solutions for snoring. Divorce is not one of them, all right? So you find that people, another one was ready to get a divorce because I caught my spouse watching porn. Okay, well, I get it. I get that you feel betrayed. I get that that's not the right behavior. But how can you assure that the next person has not watched it or will watch it? So sometimes you find that there is a good foundation, that a husband and wife, they started off, they loved each other, they saw the best in each other, but now all they do is fight. And you know the reason for that? The reason is that they lack marriage skills. They lack marriage skills. They don't know because, and it's not their fault. We go and we get education for 18 years, 25 years, some of us. And what happens is that we are getting educated, but how much education are we getting about having a beautiful marriage? How much education are we getting about conflict resolution, about how to communicate effectively? We're not. And how many of us have had that amazing example? There may be some exceptions of people having, great parents who knew how to resolve conflict, but from my experience, I've seen that that is the exception, it's not the norm, right? And so we find that when someone lacks marriage skills, when they can't even communicate, I've had literally clients sitting there, they're in their 40s, both doctors, educated, respectful individuals, and when they start the session, it's like, well, she started it. No, I didn't. You started it. And they go back and forth. And I ask them, I say, how old are you acting right now? And they sheepishly say, well, I'm acting like my 6-year-old right now. Okay? And that happens. It's natural. When we are angry, we regress. And we have to realize that we need to learn how to effectively communicate. I'm not telling you don't communicate, don't share, don't tell your needs. No, I don't want anyone to be miserable. And this is the promise I make to my clients, is that I will be very honest and let you know if I feel that this is an abusive, harmful relationship where you're constantly going to fight, it's a bad environment, I'm going to tell you that. And I'm going to encourage you to get out of that situation. And if it's something where it's just a matter of fine-tuning, learning certain skills, maybe learning communication skills, maybe learning the conflict resolution, I will be honest with that too, because what happens is that too many times people give up too early. They give up too soon. The conflict resolution is non-existent. I mean, let's look at just in our massages, with our friendships, with the board members, if a problem arises, how many people are able to be mature, to be kind, to have the compassion, to have all those beautiful characteristics of the Prophet ﷺ and resolve a conflict? Do you know anyone like that? It's rare, right? And so what we need to do is try to embody those characteristics. And a lot of times in conflict resolution, people are just focused on their own needs. They're only focused on, it's all about me, 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 me. They're not thinking about the other view. Another marriage skill is a lack of empathy, right? We need to have that empathy. We need to feel that love, the compassion. We've been hearing so many beautiful talks today about having compassion, about wanting for your brother what you want for yourself. We all know this hadith. How many of you apply this in your marriage, right? It's always about the brother at the masjid or the sister at the halaqah. What about your spouse, right? Want for them what you want for yourself and give that kindness and that respect. And it's all about fulfilling the needs. I've never had someone come into my office and say, I have all my needs fulfilled, and that's why I want a divorce. It's always about, my needs are not met. I don't get the recognition that I need. I don't get the affection. I don't get the appreciation. Guess what? If the person learns how to do those things, you start becoming happy again. And so I always say it takes two things. It takes maturity to recognize that you need to take action, you need to be the bigger person, and it also takes crushing your ego, because the egos get very, very inflated in a marriage. And sometimes I see people in the community, they're extremely humble. They're humble servants of Allah, but in the marriage, they become a monster. It's all the ego. And so we have to crush that ego, work on ourselves to be able to save our marriage. And so one of the parting advice that I give you today is that recognize that one day you will have to stand in the court of Allah, and you will have to answer. And you will have to answer whether you fulfilled your covenant or not. If you tried your absolute best in your marriage, and many people are honest and they say, you know what? I haven't tried my best. I didn't do everything. And sometimes people will say, you know what? I tried everything and nothing works. And I tell them that you must, I'm sure you've tried everything that you know, but it may not be everything that is out there. So don't give up. Don't lose hope. Give it that one last try, and know that by learning the marriage skills, by recognizing all those reasons for divorce, kind of evaluating those things, if you're able to save your marriage. Now, I have a special gift for you, since we're, I believe we're almost out of time. How much? Okay, we're out of time. All right, so since we're out of time, and there's so much, I could talk to you for 2 hours about this subject. It's a very deep subject, and I want to give it its hug. I have a gift for you. I have a PDF that is called The 9 Gems to Save Your Marriage. If on my website, halehbanani.com, you can download that. I want each of you to at least give it one last try. At least try some new techniques. So I pray that each one of you, if you're struggling with this decision, may Allah make it crystal clear for you. May you make the decision that's best for you and best for your children. And may Allah bless all of you. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.